Welcome to Corrective Consciousness episode 205, the podcast where we explore the inanity of pop culture. I'm your host, vysethebold, and this is
Lotus Prince.
And we have another great Sega theme show here for you today. Now, when we left off, we were kind of exiting the Saturn era, right? We were getting
Saturn,
towards the end
Sega
of the Saturn.
CD, 32X.
And 32X. So, I wanted to do some quick overview of like some of the best Saturn titles, just because like I feel like the Saturn is the system that just never got a chance in the United States. It's kind of like the TurboGrafx 16. It was released here, but like some of its best games were kept from us. And it kind of stinks because there's some really, really great Saturn titles. Like, first of all, you have Nights in the Dreams, which a lot of people took as a follow-up to Sonic because Yuji Naka was working on it, and it was not a follow-up to Sonic. It was never meant to be one.
Close.
And it's a much more arcadey title. It's built around like speedrunning and getting better and better times. You could beat the game very quickly. So like a lot of people were disappointed in that because they didn't quite know what they were getting. But if you take it for a game on its own, it's actually pretty fun. You also have the Panzer Dragoon games here as well. The first game is, of course, Where Everything Begins, and that was just remade. It was an on-rail shooter that was very cinematic for the time, and it really helped, Sega build an identity for itself in this era, because Sonic was basically non-existent on the Saturn. He has a couple spin-off titles, and that's it.
Yeah, like Sonic Jam, like remade Sonic 1 and 2, I think. Or was it
has 1, 2, and 3.
It was 3 as well. All right.
Yeah, and Sonic and Knuckles, I think, is on there as well.
Okay.
But they added Spin Dash to Sonic 1.
Yeah, that is very welcome.
But they basically just had a demo in there of like a 3D version of Green Hill Zone. But that was basically all we got. I mean, there was
Sonic 3D.
There was Sonic 3D Blast, which is the Saturn version of that.
It's probably the best version, except for the really slow load times.
Well, there's also the recent director's cut of the Genesis version, which adds some modern.
That's right. I have
niceties.
not seen. I forgot about. I have not seen the director's cut.
Yeah.
But the Saturn and the PC version had more graphical things going on with them, and an entirely different soundtrack. Gorgeous soundtrack.
Yeah, it has a really good soundtrack, but it's not the best Sonic game. No. It's an interesting one, but it's not the best one
it is
by a long
not.
shot. And then there's Sonic R, which was an on-foot racing game that was very odd, but fun in a academic way, but I don't know if going through the motions is actually fun in it.
Yeah. Super chill music, though. That Super Sonic Racing game.
Can you feel the sunshine?
Yeah, Sonic Racing.
But, yeah, I mean, that's what you had. So instead, there were a lot of other things like, Panzer Dragoon was at the forefront in what was great. I mean, they had art by the French comic artist Mobius, and that inspired the entire world of it. And then the sequel, Zwei, Panzer Dragoon 2 Zwei, is considered to be the best in the series by a lot of people. But Orta later on, which was an Xbox OG exclusive, gives it a run for its money. So there's a lot of really good titles. And
then there's Saga for the Saturn as well, which had RPG elements.
Saga was also one of the very last games released for the system. I think there's only something like 10,000 copies, something like that,
Yeah, Saga
were
is
printed.
like the Snatcher of Saturn. It's
It really
extremely hard to
is
find.
extremely hard to find, and also complete because it had 4 discs and all that. And it's also considered to be like one of the best RPGs of all time, and has never gotten a port or anything.
Nor will it
And
ever, unless it gets the remake treatment like the original Panzer Dragoon did.
yeah, and it may get a remake treatment eventually, but it a lot of people really love it. It's a lot of fun. It has a system that's built around the way you're facing on the dragon. There are like 4 cardinal directions, and
Yeah.
has a unique battle system. It's a lot of fun. But good luck getting a copy of it. Jesus. But the system was also well known for a lot of other RPGs. A bunch of them were brought over by Working Designs. You
Yeah,
had
Dragon Force.
Dragon Force, which was a Sega property, but it was localized by Working Designs,
Yeah, you
and
could tell it was localized by Working Designs because, like, you know how some games have different like box art.
yeah.
They had different disc art, so you like
Oh yeah,
really actually had to buy the game twice. Like, fuck you, no one's like, it's hard enough to
nobody's
get
doing
one
that.
copy.
Yeah,
How many
that's
people
like
were buying alternate copies of Saturn games?
it's like going to multiple theaters to watch Clue.
Yeah, and like there's a reason that movie bombed hard in theaters.
But yeah, that's one of the best strategy games of the era. It also has a sequel that was fan translated recently,
Yeah, I'm
relatively
very pleased
speaking.
about that.
And a lot of people really love that series. Some people say it's like some of their best, like favorite RPGs of all time.
Yeah.
That one in particular.
And there's the Shining. Well, you're still
Yeah.
focusing on Working Designs, but
Well, I was actually going to move on to that as well. Shining Force 3 was a fantastic title as well for the system. I love the Shining Force series. I haven't beaten them all, but they're all a lot of fun. Imagine Fire Emblem, but not nearly as harsh, but still a lot of fun. So the characters have a lot of personality and character. Really good. The first 2 games are for the Genesis,
Genesis.
and then there's their Sega CD title, which is a compilation of the Game Gear games, and then there's the third mainline game. And the interesting thing about this game is that it was a game that was kind of like maybe like the dot hack games or something like that. It was a game that was released in 3 parts, and each part was. It's kind of like the recent Fire Emblem games, I guess.
Oh
Is
yeah, you
probably a
said
better.
you're playing in like different people's perspectives.
Yeah,
So
so
it's like
there.
Fire Emblem Fates and Conquest.
Yeah, exactly. It's like that one. So we only ever got the first part, but 2 other parts were released on top of that. So there are, you know, 3 parts in total, and then there was a bonus disc that had even more. An extra. I think what they did with the bonus disc is, if you sent away to get it,
Oh jeez.
you because you needed like the UPCs from the 3 games in order to get it, but what it had was 3D recreations of battles from the first 2 games
Oh,
on there,
that's
which is pretty
cool.
cool. Don't quote me on that, but I think I remember that's what it was. Thankfully, we have gotten fan translations of Part 2, Part 3, and the Special Edition disc. So you have access to them now if you have a Saturn emulator or Saturn optical drive emulator like a Rhea or the one
Phoebe.
that's coming out, the Phoebe or the Fenrir. There's a whole bunch of them now.
Yeah, yeah.
There's the Mode by Terra Onion that's coming out. So, geez, what else is there?
Mr.
There's
Bones.
what's that?
Mr. Bones.
There's Mr. Bones. There's a lot of quirky titles on the platform. Mr. Bones is really kind of every level is a little bit different, right?
Yeah,
Isn't that
it's
how
like
it
a
works?
treasure game in that regard, except it's not actually a treasure game.
Yeah, really unusual, but a lot of fun and something to take a look at. There's also a lot of janky, fun games on the system. Battle
Yeah.
Monsters is our favorite.
Well.
Yeah,
Actually, what one good game that I was kind of waiting for you to bring up was Guardian Heroes.
yeah. I was actually going to bring up Treasure's actual output on the system. So Guardian Heroes is considered by a lot of people to be one of the best beat 'em ups of all time. It was probably to my knowledge the first console beat 'em up to have RPG elements and have a focus like that.
That was before the Capcom Dungeons and Dragons stuff.
So, like I said, console focused.
Oh, okay, okay.
It was meant to be a long form story. It had saving ability, all that kind of stuff. So, it was like a longer form game. It also had like plane switching, kind of like Fatal Fury. Like
Oh, okay.
there are 3 planes that um, you can attack enemies from. It also has a karma system. Like if you continue to attack the bad guy after they're knocked out, you get a penalty in some form or another towards the end of the game.
Huh.
There's all kinds of cool stuff about it. It even has some characters in it that were in Gunstar Heroes, implying that it was a prequel. Really interesting game that was remade on Xbox 360. I definitely recommend picking up that. There's also Radiant Silvergun, which is considered by a lot of people to be one of the best shmups of all time, depending on who you ask.
Oh, there's also Bomberman, which to this
Saturn
day,
Bomberman, yeah.
Saturn Bomberman, which to this day is the Bomberman that can support the most players on screen at once, but only for one level. Only one level is designed to
Yeah,
do
and
that.
it's boring.
Yeah, it's
we
not good,
tried
but
it.
like as a technical achievement, yeah, you can have up to 10 players on like the green fields level of Bomberman, but really at this point the Switch Bomberman is the way to go.
Yeah.
All the levels can support 8 players.
Yeah, I really love Saturn Bomberman's one-player mode as well. On top of that, it's
Yeah, I
really
actually
good.
beat that. It's legitimately good. So that's the second Bomberman game I've ever beaten, including 64.
Yeah, there's some unique. There's also some really good arcade ports on there. There's Die Hard Arcade, which is one of my favorites. I
Yes.
really love that game.
Or is it actually over
It's also known as Dynamite Deca or Dynamite
Yeah.
Cop.
There's if you care about this, there's Golden Axe the Duel.
Yeah, so that one's a one-on-one fighter because that was kind of popular at the
Yeah,
time.
that I gotta say I was disappointed in the character selection because there are 3 characters that are allusions to playable characters from the first 3 games, and you can actually play as Death Adder, which is fucking rad. But everyone else in that game is completely new. It's not like you play as the Bitter Brothers or whatever. It's like everyone's just completely new, and I'm like, okay, I guess it might as well not be a Golden Axe game.
Also, in fighting games, some of the best games for the system are the 3D fighting games. You have Virtua Fighter 2, which is really amazing. Virtua Fighter 1 wasn't such a great port, and then they did an upgrade of it that's a lot better later on.
Yeah, we did mention Virtual Fighter 2 in Kids.
Yeah, all the Virtua Fighter games, there's Fighters Mega Mix and Fighting Vipers and Last Bronx. Those are all the titles that Sega made, and they're all really fun. They all have their different focuses. I think Fighting Vipers has weapons. Is that right?
No, Fighting Vipers Soul Calibur has weapons. Fighting Vipers has like I think we mentioned this last time, like a sort of armor system where
Oh yeah,
your top, middle, and lower
Last
like
Bronx
pieces
has
of armor or
weapons.
clothing can break off, but like when they do, your defense goes down, but your offense goes up. And I think Fighting Vipers, I believe, also had a gimmick where if you hit somebody hard as their final hit, you send them flying horizontally, and if the arena has like walls, like a background, they'll just
They'll
bust
blast
through
through
them
them.
like they're nothing.
Yeah,
And they do that in
yeah,
Fighters Mega Mix as well.
yeah. Those games are all a lot of fun, and they all have their own gimmick. Last Bronx is the one with weapons. I forgot.
Oh, okay. Because I was thinking, I said Soul Calibur, but in Soul Blade, or Soul Edge. Like in Soul Blade on the PS1, they never did this again, but the weapons themselves had durability, and you could just break the other guy's weapon. Like,
Yeah.
that's just, like, remember when Soul Calibur did that? I mean, it's not a Calibur game, but whatever.
Also the original Dead or Alive was originally an
It was
ST,
PS1.
but it also came out in Japan on Saturn.
Really?
Yeah, in fact, probably more definitive than the PlayStation version because the Saturn version. So the original arcade version of uh, Dead or Alive was an STV game, which is the Saturn arcade board.
Huh.
Just like Radiant Silvergun had an STV arcade version, so did this one. So that was really great. Some of the best shmups of all time are on the system as well. There's Batsugun, which is a freaking fantastic. I think it's considered to be the last Tau Plan shmup. There's all kinds of older ports of that were really, really good. Like Taito had some really good output on there. There was Elevator Action Returns,
That game is nuts.
Bubble Symphony, which is the final Bubble Bobble game that they made during that era. It was really, really, really good. It's just all kinds of really great Neo Geo ports that were pretty much arcade perfect. You also had all of Capcom's output that from the CPS2 board that they ported to the Sega Saturn. So you had all of the Street Fighter Alpha games.
Yeah.
If you played the Japanese versions, they were basically arcade perfect.
Also, one of them, I forgot which game it was, maybe Alpha 3, had some seriously sick cover art.
Oh, really, really good stuff. Let me see. What else did they release around that era?
Did they do, was Marvel Superheroes on Saturn? Was that a
Yeah,
thing?
Marvel Superheroes was on there. X-Men versus Street Fighter was on there. I don't know whether Marvel versus Street Fighter was, or Marvel versus Street Fighter was on there. I think only X-Men versus Street Fighter. Maybe both of them. Marvel vs. Capcom, of course, didn't appear until the Dreamcast.
Yeah, that was Dreamcast.
Yeah. But yeah, like basically all of the big Capcom fighters from that era made it to that system.
And speaking of Capcom, there was the Saturn version of Resident Evil 1. That was pretty
Yeah,
interesting.
I was gonna bring up some horror games too. There's also a Saturn game called Deep Fear.
Yeah, that was Japan and PAL only.
Yeah, but they unearthed the North American version.
Yeah, that never
got
ended up
an
officially
official
coming
release.
out. Yeah.
Yeah, so you could find that and play that version now. What else? There was also all those games by.
There was D.
Yeah, I was gonna say all the Junji Ito games, or not Junji Ito. What's that guy's name? Oh man,
I know what you mean,
blanking.
but I'm flaking on this. I'm gonna look it up.
Yeah, it was D and
Kenji Ino.
yeah, Kenji Ino. I think Kenji Ino.
I'm pretty sure it's Kenji something.
No, it's Kenji Ito. But he also Enemy Zero's on there as kind of a follow up.
That's
to that.
right. That's right. Yep, Enemy Zero.
Yeah, there's all kinds of really great games for the system that are offbeat, and those are certainly there.
I very much hesitate to call D great. It was interesting, but like, it just the execution was jank. Oh, I should mention by the way that
You're right.
D is really a 3DO game, but on PS1 and Saturn there were ports.
Yeah. I think Enemy Zero was originally a Saturn game though.
Yes, and I believe it also got a PC release.
Yeah, and then D2 was a
matter.
Dreamcast game.
D2 was Dreamcast, I think, completely Dreamcast exclusive.
Yeah.
Because Sony fucked him over, so he was like, "All right, fine, I'm sticking with Sega."
Yeah, he called them out publicly, like during a presentation. Like,
oh, did
like,
he?
Yeah.
That's
It was
amazing.
Yeah, and that
Because yeah,
like
Sony promised him X number of copies of D, and they just didn't deliver on it.
yeah,
They far
craziness.
underproduced.
What else was there?
Clockwork Knight 1 and 2. I just like bringing those up.
Bug 1 and 2. Um,
Yeah, no, Bug and Bug like TOO, Bug 2.
yeah, don't seek those out. They're not good.
I tried playing a little bit of the first one, and it's got like interesting graphical quirks, but the game is like nothing to really write home about.
Yeah. There's Assault Suits Lanos, which is a really it's like the sequel to Cybernator.
Wasn't Assault
Um,
Suits Lanos like a Genesis title?
yeah, the original one. So Assault Suits Lanos 2 is on the Saturn.
Okay.
So it's
By the
Assault
way,
Suits.
people, for the listeners, consider that Assault Suits Lanos was a Genesis title, and America never got it until
No, we did.
like well, we did on store shelves on PS4.
No, we did. It was called something else. It was called
Well, we okay. In that case, let's just say we got it as Assault Suits Lanos on PS4.
yeah, like Cybernator and all those games had a yeah, as Assault Suits Vulcan. Yeah, there's a whole bunch of them.
Huh.
Like but yes, Assault Suit series. Let me take a look here. Assault Suit Lanos was called Target Earth on the Genesis, and it came to the
Oh.
U.S.
Huh.
Assault Suits
Okay.
Vulcan is Cybernator, and that was the Super Nintendo one. And then there was Assault Suits Lanos 2, which is the Saturn game, which is really good. It's probably the best game in the series. And then there's Vulcan 2, which is an RPG, which is a sequel to Cybernator, basically.
How bizarre.
Yeah, yeah. And then they
But
remade Target Earth a lot later.
yeah, there were a lot of even outside of horror titles, there were a lot of Saturn versions of games that have weird little quirks. Like Duke Nukem 3D had like a version. I
Tomb
think
Raider.
Tomb Raider had like a
Yeah.
version. Yeah, like I think I forgot what
Power
was it.
Slave.
That's true too. But was it Doom or Quake or was it both? It might have
All
been
of them
Quake,
got.
right?
I
Was
don't
Doom
think
on
there is a.
Saturn?
I don't think there's a version of Doom on Saturn. I don't
Maybe
recall
I'm
that.
thinking Doom on 3DO or something. I know Doom had
Yeah.
one really weird port that like had completely original music. It might have been 3DO.
That's 3DO. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that's 3DO. But yeah, I mean, I absolutely love the Saturn, but only looking back at it because, like, as an American, we missed out on a lot of the big titles. I mean, we got a lot of the 3D titles, but a
Well,
lot of
that's
the
the whole
2D
thing. That was when
titles got
3D was
held
getting in
back.
vogue. Like
Yeah.
Saturn was like at the top of its game with 2D stuff, but we didn't care about 2D anymore at the time, so we missed out. It's kind of like the example I've brought up before, like Toonstruck. That's like a high quality point and click adventure with a star-studded cast, like people you've heard of today. You know,
Christopher
it's a
Lloyd.
what Christopher Lloyd, Ben Stein, Tim Curry. I forgot the name, but someone who voices someone in like the Animaniacs. Like everybody
Probably
is some.
Rob Paulson, who did
No,
Pinky the
no,
Brain.
she voiced Dot. I
Oh,
forgot
okay,
like,
her.
and she voiced like an overly cutesy, obnoxious like parody of that in the game, where she was like an asshole. Um, like everything about that game was done right, but whoops, the year's 1996. We don't care about point and click anymore. Too bad. Even though it's a legitimately good game, we were like, but what about cool new stuff though? Like that it was just a shame. So that's I mean, the Saturn was sabotaged from day one. Outside of that, but the fact that it was so intent on like quality 2D stuff rather than more natural feeling 3D also did not do it any favors.
Yeah, it also had some funky ports of like Sega properties that weren't like I said, the original Virtua Fighter had a bad port to start with,
Yeah.
and also Daytona's port wasn't good. It's a shame because like Daytona USA was like one of their most popular games at that time, and they didn't have a good port of their own game.
Yeah.
Um, uh, House of the Dead has a bad port. House
Yeah,
of the
it's
Dead 1.
mediocre.
I'm not a big fan of that port, even though it's basically like the only port of that
Yeah,
game.
it's the only console release. It's that or like
The PC
find
version.
the PC version.
Yeah, the PC version's better. Um, Yeah, there are several bad ports on that system that kind of mar it, unfortunately. But there are plenty of other fantastic ones that just got overlooked at the time. There's just so
There's
many.
also that really weird stuff going on, like Mansion of Hidden Souls
Oh yeah, yeah.
and Lunacy, which I believe is the third game in that series. Because there's Mansion
Yeah,
of Hidden Souls, there's Mansion of Hidden Souls again, because those are two different games, both called the same fucking thing, and there's Lunacy. Because there's the Sega CD one and there's the Saturn one.
there's also what's considered to probably be the most definitive version of Police Knots,
Oh,
and that got
that's
a fan
true.
translation as well.
Yeah, America never got any Police Knots, so you gotta settle for fan translation for PS1 and for Saturn. But yeah, I think the Saturn has like a little bit more going on
It
in
has
it.
light gun support.
Yeah, that's actually, well, yeah, in particular parts of the game that's especially important.
Let me see what else.
The
The
PS1 had like what, mouse support?
That's correct. Yep.
Okay.
PS1 mouse support. You have Virtual Highlight, which is one of the worst RPGs ever.
Even regular Highlight sucks, and Virtual Highlight is a
Is
remake
even
of the
worse.
original, but in 3D. But it's like way more. I watched the
It's
GDQ run
bizarre.
of that, and that was one of my favorite runs because it is hilarious.
Yeah, it's a bizarre looking game and a bizarre playing game and everything.
And they had
It's
like a
really
real
terrible.
guy as the playable character. You know, like in Mortal
It's like
Kombat, they're like
digitized.
real
Yeah.
people. But it obviously looks like just some guy. He doesn't look like a hero. He clearly looks like someone who worked for the developers or something. It's like, here, you're Mr. Highlight guy. Like, all right, he just looks so goofy. It's amazing because he's not. He's just kind of like, he doesn't have like a full run cycle. He kind of has like some movements that they loop, and it looks so bizarre. It's weird, and the princess is also clearly a woman who worked in the office. Here, put this on. You're the princess. All right, fine. It's
There's
so.
also a
It's
weird
like in King's Quest
di-
V. Half the voices were like the devs.
There's also a weird digitized like Shinobi sequel on that
Oh
system as
yeah, yeah,
well. But
yeah.
that game's actually pretty good. It's pretty decent. So
And there's also by far the best Batman game ever released, ever.
uh,
Batman
Batman and
Forever.
Robin. No,
Oh,
is
is it
it
Batman and
Batman?
Robin?
Is it Batman Forever? Yeah, no, you're right. It's Batman Forever. Yeah,
It is Forever because that's the Riddler.
yeah.
That game is the best.
Imagine like Mortal Kombat if it were a beat 'em up, but with Batman and Robin, and they do DBZ moves.
Yeah, well, yeah, they have bomb attacks. And when I say bomb, I mean like in a shooter where it's like clear the screen. Like they have that going on. It makes no sense.
There's
It's the best game ever made.
like Robin has like a spirit bomb attack
Yeah, that's what I'm
out of
talking
nowhere.
about. It's out of control. I like at some point I should stream that game because like
It's wacky.
it'll be like the Battle Monsters effect, or no, actually no, you know what it'll be. One time I actually streamed Target Terror, and half the fun was just watching the chat.
Oh
Like
yeah,
Batman Forever is gonna be one of those. It's
Batman
the
Forever
best.
just has so much chaos going on the screen, and you have like out of context is one of the weirdest things you've ever
It's
seen in your
so
life.
good.
Yeah, yeah. It's kind of like watching that game out of context is kind of like watching that scene in Troll 2 that the angry video game nerd just went over.
Oh,
James Rolfe just went
when you
over.
see them watching some movie, like what movie is that?
Yeah, yeah. Like where the monkey rockets up. Oh
Yeah,
man,
like
yeah.
what the fuck? It's great.
Yeah, out of context, Jesus Christ,
Even in
it's
context, it's freaking
yeah.
ridiculous.
But yeah, oh my God, there's just so many titles, but unfortunately, it didn't get a really good fair shake. It got its butt kicked by both the PlayStation and the N64 at the time. And
Because both games or both systems did 3D way better, and they also like Mario and Zelda in 3D. Can you believe it? And then the PS1 had tons of 3D games that just looked really good.
yeah,
Like Final
so
Fantasy VII, like what are you gonna do about that? I mean, the gameplay graphics were mediocre, but it was like Final Fantasy in 3D.
um, we were a Sega family, and we jumped ship off of after the 32X. That was like the last like Sega console we bought for a long time,
I don't know
and
if I even really knew about the Saturn at the time, and like
yeah,
the Dreamcast, like a friend of mine had it, and I was like, oh, that's cool. But the next time we got a system after the Genesis was the N64.
Oh, and I also have to mention the Saturn's controller is one of the best controllers of all time. It's so good.
It's pretty solid. Yeah, it's basically well, like the Japanese version. It
Japanese
just
version,
it
yeah.
yeah, the American one's okay. The Japanese version just is the Sega Genesis 6 button controller, except also with an L and an R. That's all you need.
It's also like shaped ergonomically, and the D-pad is
Yeah,
perfect. It's the best thing for shmups and fighting games. It's so
yeah.
good. I love it. It's really really good. But let me see here. So my experience with playing the Saturn was pretty interesting. The first time I had ever played it was kind of at a like when the system had first been released. Sega would go around to like functions like like county fairs and stuff like that with um, a, a Coca-Cola themed video game van. Or it was like a video game truck. It was
Weird.
almost like a like like a burrito truck that you see on the side of the road nowadays, like a big truck like that, but
Yeah, yeah.
with systems lined up to promote the system. But they were also doing a joint promotion with Coke for Cherry Coke at the time. And what what ended up happening was I used to be on a local swim team when I was a kid, and that truck came to one of my swim meets to promote the Sega Saturn and Cherry Coke. It was really weird, but I got to play a lot of Virtua Fighter 2, and I loved it. And that was a really good port on that system. So that was the first time I had ever played the Saturn, and but I ended up buying my brother had aged out of video games pretty much at that point, and the 32X was like the last thing that he got, and it kind of burned him. So he moved on to other things and to college, and I ended up buying a PlayStation. So I actually had only really wanted a Saturn after I heard like all of the people that were really into imports, because that's where the Saturn really shines is the imports. And I didn't find out about them until much, much later, until the system had already died. So I didn't get a Saturn until I worked at GameStop, and some guy wanted to trade in a Saturn with Magic Knight Rayearth, which turned out to be like one of the
That's
rarest games for the
crazy. Yep,
system.
that is the last game for the system.
Yeah, and also Darius Gaiden, which is one of the best shmups on the system. I love Darius, and that's one of the best Darius games. And a stall and a couple other games. And we didn't take Saturns as trade-ins because it was just so like unprofitable at the time.
Yeah.
But I gave the guy gave me his phone number because I wanted.
You did
I
like a
told him
private transaction.
I
Yeah.
wanted to buy it, yeah. So I ended up meeting him at a 7-Eleven and buying it off of him for $40, like the whole thing.
That's
Um,
crazy.
and it came with everything, even the battery, the battery that saves your game and keeps the time.
Yeah, the watch battery.
Yeah, the ribbon hadn't been plucked
Very
on
nice.
that, so it was in really good condition. It's still the Saturn that I have to this day.
Nice.
And I have since modded it to have an optical drive emulator, and I actually created the library that we use on that, and I absolutely love it these days. It's one of those systems you can't do without for this era. It's very very kind of similar to the PC Engine in that way. A lot of really interesting stuff, and I really love it now, but it took me a long time for people to warm up to it, and now it's like a big classic gaming system for sure. Any other final things you want to say on the Saturn before we move on?
No, I think I'm good.
Okay, so of course, Sega from that point actually had a hit on their hands in Japan. Like Saturn did really well in Japan, probably better than the N64 did. It was kind of the opposite of what happened over here. But they wanted to follow up and beat Sony to the punch before the PlayStation 2 was released. So they ended up releasing the Dreamcast, which was the first system for that generation. And it was really interesting. What was your first experience with the Dreamcast? When did you first see it?
Um, it was definitely from a friend I had in middle school. I forgot if I first saw it at his place or he took it to my place. But I mentioned in our part 1 Sega discussion that that was how I was introduced to Soul Calibur. He had brought it over to my place, and I saw Soul Calibur, and I was wowed by it. But it was either that, or I was at his place and saw Sonic Adventure 1 and Phantasy Star Online. I was smitten by both. Also, actually, Shenmue. I didn't, do anything in it. I just saw the opening cutscene, could not believe my eyes. And then, you could walk around the town and knock on doors of houses. I was like, yo, this game's, next level. It turns out it's not a very fun game, but it really was extremely ambitious.
So my first experience was that I saw it at a mall kiosk. I saw it at an EB Games, electronics boutique at the time. And they had one set up to preview before the system had come out in the United States. And they had a copy of Power Stone running.
Oh, that's very good.
So Power Stone was the first experience I had on the Dreamcast. And I was just playing it, and then somebody came up to face me. And I ended up a line formed behind me while I was playing this game, and it was a game I had just learned how to play. And but I guess I was getting more and more experience from fighting all these people in a row. But I ended up beating 5 people in a row.
Nice.
Just as a little kid. I was 12 at the time, and I was smitten. I absolutely could not wait until I could get a Dreamcast. Of course, I couldn't afford one until lawn mowing season hit, because I was a kid. So I got one the next summer, and I was in love. I bought the House of the Dead 2, which was one of the best games for the system. Really great port of that game, much better than the House of the Dead 1 port. I bought Sonic Adventure, of course, that was the mainline title, and I eventually got Soul Calibur as a birthday gift that summer as well. Soul Calibur 1 was the killer app for
you've
the
never
Dreamcast.
seen a fighting game that just looked so beautiful at the time.
It still looks good. It still looks good.
Yeah, it does.
It just looked that good. It was very, 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 very impressive, and it wasn't just a good port. It's definitive. It was a lot better looking than the arcade version. It was a lot more powerful than its original arcade port that it had released on. One of the best fighting games of all time. It's still a lot of the original. Still
holds up.
Yeah, it's still a lot of fun. I definitely even recommend seeking out that version of the game, because it's still really great version, because it has that challenge mode that didn't carry over to the HD version.
360.
Yeah. Though if you just want to play one-on-one battles, that version's just fine. But really, really, really good stuff. I played that game for hours. Loved it. And there were a bunch of bad games on the system too. A lot of weird stuff.
Carrier, the Ring,
Carrier, the Ring.
You showed me a bit of the Ring. It's like, what?
And the Ring was before we had gotten the movie The Ring. It was
we did not know what the Ring was.
Yeah, it was based off the movie while it was in Japan, and we hadn't gotten it yet. I think
we might even feature some footage from it.
Yeah. Had no idea anything about it. It has Blue Stinger was a launch title. That's a weird game. It's certainly worth playing academically.
Yeah, Illbleed.
Illbleed is its spiritual follow-up. It's a really crazy game. Just fucking fantastic system, though, overall. I mean, you have Power Stone 2 later on. Capcom was the real superhero on that system, outside of Sega themselves. Sega had some really great ports on there. I mean, there's a version of Daytona that's really good on there, finally. What else is on there?
Oh, actually, I forgot to mention this, but the Saturn had Virtua Cop 1 and 2, and I think the Dreamcast in a compilation disc might have also done Virtua Cop 2.
It has Virtua Cop 2 on the Sega Smash Collection.
That's what it is, yeah.
Which is a bad collection other than that.
Yeah, and
that's
I think it's
the only game
different
that's
from
good.
the Saturn version too. I think it's something.
It might be based off the PC version or something.
Virtua Squad.
Yeah. It was really interesting because the Dreamcast was also made with Windows CE. They teamed up with
That's
Microsoft.
Right.
And another big feature of the Dreamcast was that it was the first mainstream online console. Like there have been
with DLC.
There have been systems before that that had dabbled in it. Like there was NetPlay for the Saturn had that for was a Virtual On and a few other titles.
And even the Genesis had that, like, via the phone.
X-Link or whatever.
Service.
Yeah. But it wasn't mainstream. It was something kind of obscure. But this had legit online games and helped.
Phantasy Star Online.
Yeah,
it was earth-shattering.
And the big first-person shooter, it had a great, fantastic version of Quake 3 Arena.
3, yeah.
Yeah. I played Quake 3 Arena 4-player in my split screen in my house many a year. It was really, really good. In fact,
by the way, you go ahead.
I was gonna say we graduated from playing GoldenEye to playing that.
Yeah. Now, I was gonna say, by the way, low-hanging fruit, but Skies of Arcadia was on the Dreamcast, of course.
Absolutely. One of the best RPGs of all time. My
also,
namesake.
the sequel to Dynamite Deca, Dynamite Cop.
Yeah, Dynamite Cop is actually a fucking blast.
Yeah, we beat that.
It's really, really fun, and then kind of like an offshoot of House of the Dead that's kind of similar is Zombies Revenge.
Zombies Revenge.
Yeah,
that game is insanely hard.
I love it though; it's a lot of fun.
Also, Cannon Spike is a pretty cool one.
Yeah, Cannon Spike's a lot of fun. That one's a Psycheo game with a lot of Capcom
the translation
references.
didn't go all the way through, so Vega still has his Japanese name Balrog.
Yeah,
I remember being confused by that. It's like Dark Balrog, and I'm like, but what? But it's Vega though. I didn't know about the name rotation at the time.
And the main character of the game is of course Cammy, and her moves are one of her moves is the Cannon Spike. So
yes,
so that was a lot of fun. You can
also play as Arthur from Ghosts and Goblins in a giant fuck-off mech suit.
And Mega Man.
Yes.
Yeah,
and of course you already mentioned this, but Marvel vs. Capcom.
Oh yeah. Marvel
Actually, I forgot
Capcom.
if you mentioned this. You mentioned X-Men vs. Street Fighter. Yeah, Marvel vs. Capcom 1. Was 2 on the Dreamcast as well?
No, Marvel vs. Capcom. Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, it was. I'm sorry.
Okay,
yeah.
So 1 and 2.
1 and 2. Yeah, we're
Marvel
both on the
vs.
system.
Capcom 1. I have more memories of because I remember seeing in the arcades where the final boss was Onslaught, which is like the scariest thing.
I played so much of that game. Marvel vs. Capcom 2 was the fighting game. So good.
And that's the game, by the way, where when you put in a coin for credits, you hear Mega Man going, "Let's go crazy!" So that's what that is.
And Marvel vs. Capcom 2 was an arcade exact port, because at this point the arcade games were using a lot of arcade games were using the Naomi board, which was basically like a Dreamcast in a arcade machine. So plenty of other ports were just like that. So you had like Crazy Taxi 1 and 2 ran on Naomi, so those ports were fantastic. There were just tons of them. Really, really good stuff. The Power Stone games were Naomi games. So I just had so much fun with the Sega and Capcom games on that system. You had what else did you have? You had Rival Schools 2 was on there. Project Justice.
Oh, that game is great.
Romancer, which is like a mech fighting game. that Capcom put out. You also had Street Fighter 3 Third Strike ended up making it to that system.
Yeah, that's also a
Um,
brilliant title.
I think the most definitive console version of Street Fighter Alpha 3 is on the Dreamcast. It has extra characters on top of the arcade port,
But
though.
no Captain Sawada, because the Saturn has Street Fighter the movie The Game, which had
Yeah, we
Captain
forgot to
Sawada.
mention that. But yeah, there's just so many good things, and they even had like a broadband adapter for this system, and you also had Jet Grind Radio, which is one of my favorite titles of all time. I really, really love that. Um, really, really good stuff, and all these titles, all the Sega games, and even a lot of the Capcom games had just like that Dreamcast aesthetic, just blue skies,
Also
bright
a really big
colors.
thing is that they had ports of Resident Evil 2 and 3 and Dino Crisis 1, but the real big thing was Resident Evil Code Veronica. That was a Dreamcast exclusive for a little while.
Oh,
The
sure
director's
was.
cut later made it to the PS2 and GameCube, and actually also the Dreamcast in
Yeah, it was
Japan.
called Code Veronica X, right? Later on.
Yes, yeah. Instead of
Yeah.
Code Veronica, it was Code Veronica X. But the
It was
original
also
one
the
was
hardest game in the series at the time,
that
right?
game is way hard. Yeah, of the classic Resident Evil titles, that's for me easily the most difficult one. But yeah, that was going to be like the next step in Resident Evil. That was going to be Resident Evil 3, but then they kind of changed things up. But Code Veronica was a solid title, and that's where Resident Evil moved on. Like I said before, people think of Resident Evil as having been a PlayStation exclusive, but it's always been out on Sega stuff too. And Code Veronica was actually Sega exclusive for a hot minute.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we should wrap things up for today. I'm confident that we will return to the Dreamcast era just to kind of finish it up and then talk about post Dreamcast Sega. But this was like a really good look into this era. It was a very exciting era. But we should move on to fan stuff.
Of course. So we have a comment from School Filmer. You know, here I was trying to save up for Clubhouse games. I ended up falling over the halfway hurdle when I got Monster Hunter Generations Ultimate because it was a 66% off instead. I misread that. It was 66% off. I guess I couldn't resist the feline charm after all. Maybe next time I'll manage to save up the needed amount for 51 worldwide classics. And
Yeah,
then,
I was actually looking at doing Jedi Fallen Order or whatever the newest um, Star Wars game, but that didn't. I didn't end up doing it, but I was looking for that myself because it was tempting me. It was down to
yeah.
$30 this weekend.
And then School Filmer also says, I haven't seen many James Bond movies, but I remember me and the classmates watching From Russia with Love in class years ago. We had a blast. I can't recall why we watched that. Yeah, really. It might have been a history lesson about Russia or the Cold War or something. Maybe I'll take a look at Live and Let Die out of curiosity, maybe not. As for bad writing, I don't really have anything to say, although I do remember this line from Rat and Bat Love and Hate, where Trixie balks on writing an action scene for the fanfic. I'm not very good at writing action scenes. I'll just flash forward to the end. It's cooler because it's like the story knows it doesn't even need to show the fight for the heroes to be powerful. It respects the reader's intelligence. My personal gripe would be show don't tell in that case.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Show don't tell is a very important one. Like, narration or explanations have to be done right in order to be, like, better than not showing. But yeah, John Wick is a great example of showing and not telling. Where we talked about the exposition thing before, but like outright explaining why you're not going to do something. So, Matthias Gallardo Araya, I hope I pronounced that correctly, says, I just subbed to EA Access, and man, Mass Effect, Dead Space, and Titanfall 2, what a bunch of great games. Yeah.
Oh yeah, and I must reiterate that Mass Effect 3 was added to Steam.
Oh, great, okay.
Yeah, all three are on there.
All right.
And Andromeda, actually all four.
Nice.
Yeah.
And Dracologist said, played Amalur, Peggle, Bejeweled, and such. Those aren't EA, it's PopCaps. Yeah, I guess they've fallen under the EA umbrella now, but yeah. Living Corpse says, on Leon not reloading often in Resident Evil Vendetta, the Sentinel-9 has an extended mag, so it has 20 bullets. I had heard that. I had talked to this like hardcore gun person after I'd seen the movie, but like at this point it's been a long time. I don't remember what the bullet count was, but I thought it was still above like whatever
It's like 100.
the mod would have been. It was like, yeah, I think it was like I might be wrong on this number, but I want to say it was like 22. It was some funky number that makes no sense. And Living Corpse also says, give us a Darth Nihilus movie, or Nihilus. Never heard of him, but maybe he doesn't care. They're nihilists, Downey. They're not going to do anything.
What's funny is they're the ones that care the most in that movie.
Yes. And then finally, Living Corpse says, family trees can be hard to keep track of, like needing a chart hard. Yeah, there are some people who make a whole thing out of doing just that, and there's a reason why it's called trees, like it branches out. And then Connor says, regarding writing, I read something interesting a while back about A Song of Ice and Fire that goes some way to explaining both why the next book is taking so long and why the TV series rapidly spiraled downhill in quality after running out of book material to work off of. George R. R. Martin said that he doesn't come up with plot points and then contrive a series of actions the characters would need to get to that point. Rather, he comes up with scenarios and then writes how he thinks the characters would react to them if they were real. Sometimes the outcome of this is even a surprise to him. While this leads to very well-written, consistent characters with logical arcs, he said it also leaves with a problem of them being scattered all over the book's world, and he couldn't think of a way to bring them all together that didn't seem too contrived or illogical. Yeah, that's gotta be a royal pain.
Yeah, that kind of reminds me of after the fourth book in the Dark Tower series, like Stephen King had a really hard time.
He disappeared for like 15 years or something. Well, I mean, he kept pumping out books, but the Dark Tower just stopped for a long time, like 10 years or something.
Yeah, the gap between 4 and 5 is huge.
And it ended on a huge cliffhanger too, didn't it?
Yeah, well, 4.
Oh wait, no, 4 was the flashback.
No, the huge cliffhanger's 3.
Okay.
3 to 4,
so,
but
right.
that there was a gap there too. But the last 3 books were kind of written in rapid succession. So,
yeah.
But he, like, somebody came up to him and just like absolutely loved the books and was like, I have terminal cancer. Can you please tell me how these end? Because what happens? Because I'm gonna die. I want to know. And he was just like, I don't know. Like he just.
Yeah.
He didn't have like an outline or anything. He doesn't know where the characters were gonna take him until he wrote it. So he didn't know and couldn't get there yet. It was just one of those things.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And for our question. This is also from Connor. There's been a lot of discussion about remakes everywhere lately, but what are your thoughts on demakes? Or even just newer games that take the less is more approach? You might have seen stuff like Gone Home, where it's like the most pixelated things ever, but that's not the point. I recently played an 8-bit demo, or an 8-bit demake of No Man's Sky called Low Mem Sky. That's pretty great. And had more fun with it than the original. I've also really enjoyed some of the throwback FPS games like Dusk, and there are some really great horror games that use a PS1 era aesthetic to great effect. Yeah. Another example is a 2012 game, Lone Survivor. Yeah, that's basically like if Silent Hill were like a 2D game. I played that one. Mm-hmm. And it captured that atmosphere perfectly. Are there any similar games that use fewer resources and less budget to do a better job than their AAA counterparts that you've played?
Dusk is definitely up there for me.
I mean, this is probably low-hanging fruit, but like Isaac and Gungeon are just little pixely, simple-looking games that have a lot more like behind-the-scenes going on in them.
Gungeon especially. Yeah, I love that. Yeah.
We played those goofy the Devolver like demake pack like that Ape Out Junior, which is just Donkey Kong Jr. again. There was Hotline Milwaukee, which is like really low bit Hotline Miami kind of, and it worked. They're interesting as experiments, and sometimes they can be really quality games anyway.
Yeah, I actually really love demakes. That's why I'm excited about like that 8-bit version of Pac-Man Championship Edition. I'm really looking forward to that. I like a Medieval, which is similar to Hexen. That's also in made by the same. I think it's the same publisher as Dusk.
Yeah, so, and we have Ion Fury, which is like the Duke Nukem 3D people just making another game with the 3D engine.
Yeah, we have Project Warlock that's in there as well. I mean, there's tons of great stuff. I actually prefer kind of games that aren't on the AAA space because they don't really let you down. They usually have like really good ideas, and they also don't hype themselves up. So like you kind of just go
That
in
yeah,
and
that does help. Yeah.
you go in expecting a scrappy little experience and you have one, and it's a lot of fun. I mean, Isaac is great too because it's a one man team. Like the guy
Yeah.
basically makes it himself, Edmund McMillan, and I really love Enter the Gungeon. I think Enter the Gungeon is like the perfect example of that. I love all kinds of pixel arty games and all kinds of stuff like that. In
And you know
fact,
what's
they're
also
probably
kind of
my
fun?
favorite.
Well, you know what's also fun is now that that original era of games is over, it's fun to see games made in that style that do more than was
Oh
thought
yeah.
possible or
Yeah, like
was
Ion
possible.
Furies, like that, like using an old engine, like retrofitted into a modern context.
But also Xenocrisis. Can you
Oh
imagine
yeah.
if that game was released at the time?
Oh, it would have been an all-time classic.
Like that would have been unbelievable.
People would still be looking back at it today and being
Yeah.
like, "Yo, this was the shit. Like, make something like this."
Yeah. It'd be
um,
freaking amazing.
I love stuff like that. I mean, there's a lot of stuff coming out. They recently made a Jay and Silent Bob like River City Ransom style game taking place in like a mall.
Yeah, and
Um,
they had that like
and
what
that
was
was
that like
meant
Italian comedy duo like something in Beans?
Oh, Slaps and Beans, yeah.
Slaps and Beans, yeah,
Yeah.
that like comedy duo that if you followed that guy's stuff, you'd be like, ah, that's right up there with what they would do. Like, in I think there was also a beat 'em up.
Yeah, yeah. The Jay and Silent Bob one was actually like programmed for the NES, and then like when you buy it for a modern system, it uses an emulator. Like they
Oh, that's
programmed
clever.
it for an
So
NES.
so
Just
you could put it into an NES and play it.
yeah, it's kind of just like
Well, like Xenocrisis, you
Xenocrisis.
could
Yeah,
actually buy the Genesis cartridge, which is amazing.
I actually recommend playing the modern system versions though because the
Yeah,
twin
it's
sticks.
supposed to be like a twin stick shooter, so yeah, with a
Yeah.
Genesis controller, it wouldn't feel right, but you could do it,
I
which is
bought the
very
ROM
impressive.
and I actually like the way that it controls on the Switch better.
Yeah.
um,
By the way, speaking of things that like are more advanced than what they could have been capable of, one thing I get a kick out of, and I didn't think about this until I saw the Game Grumps play it, was Shovel Knight, which has the
oh yeah.
NES aesthetic, but there's this one boss, the whatever he was called, the Snow Knight. Do you know what I'm talking about? The guy who uses a snow shovel,
Oh yeah. Hmm.
like Chill Knight or whatever he was.
Yeah.
But
Sure. Sure.
like, but he's beige, and that color was not on the NES. So it's an NES game with like an additional color. And it's like, ah, look at that. Did you catch that? You know, little things like that are just amusing to me.
Yeah, I mean, I love all kinds of stuff like that. A lot of people know that I'm a huge fan of Metroidvanias, and almost every Metroidvania is like this. I
That's
absolutely love
true,
it.
yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, like
Um,
Blasphemous has a pixely look, but like a high quality. Like it's not overly pixely like Atari Pixel, but it looks like almost smooth amount of pixels. But you
yeah.
could tell it is pixels. So you're like, hmm. So like, that's not a demake, and it's not low res, but like, it's not a AAA game for sure. So it's pretty cool to see.
I like all kinds of remakes too. I'm not putting down remakes at the same time. I actually kind of like it when it happens. In fact, I mean, Demon Souls remade, sure,
Well,
please.
yeah, I mean, but just this is in particular about like, what do you think of remakes? I mean, a lot of remakes can be freaking amazing. I can't
Yeah.
wait for Demon Souls. But like, if you ever had like, well, we already do have a bunch of sort of Souls like style games that are not from Salt, like Salt and Sanctuary kind
Sure.
of has that vibe. And I do not remember what the game was called, but there was like a 2D style where you can move up and down the screen like Streets of Rage. It was like,
Takedown.
yeah, it was like vaguely like it was kind of Bloodborne-ish kind of like, so that there's a bunch of Souls likes.
Oh, okay, yeah, I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, I don't
Dracula
remember
just
what it was called.
showed me that
Yes,
one.
that's exactly, yeah,
Yeah,
you showed me that one. But there's a bunch of games that are like, oh, this new AAA thing looks awesome. What if I made that for like $15 on Steam or whatever? Or there's like, I mentioned this a few weeks ago, the Texturcist. It's a shooter and a typing game. It's this little indie thing, and it's just kind of charming.
yeah, that's gonna bother me. I know what that I know exactly what you're talking
Dracologist
about.
will probably be able to answer it in a second, but yeah, the
Yeah.
name escapes me because I haven't seen it in a long time.
Yeah, there was also it's a Sultan Sanctuary
Well,
is
I
the
already
other one.
mentioned that.
Yeah. I don't know.
I look
It's a
forward to playing that one too.
yeah. No, that one's fun. Yeah, I think this is all great. I think we should move on though. We should wrap things up unless you had
Mm-hmm.
something else to say here.
No, I'm good.
Okay, so that is the show for this week. Please remember to subscribe to the Corrective Consciousness YouTube and SoundCloud pages. While there, please give us thumbs ups, likes, and 5-star ratings on iTunes. Uh, oh man, I am tired and I lost
And
my
good night,
place.
everybody.
It helps promote and spread awareness and keep and any bit of awareness helps keep the show
Whatever, click the
going.
like button to subscribe.
You can catch us on Tuesdays for our podcast Reactive Consciousness, the in-depth podcast look at this week in our lives. Jesus. Finally, you can friend me as vysethebold on pretty much anything.
And you can follow me on my YouTube channel, Lotus Prince. You can hit me up on Twitter at Lotus Prince. And finally, if you are interested in seeing my videos early, getting in exclusive live streams, selecting upcoming games for me to Let's Play, we're doing Omicron, baby, or getting in conversations with me and other patrons on Discord, then perhaps consider swinging by my Patreon account, which can be found at patreon.com/LotusPrince.
All right, well, we'll catch you next time on Tuesday for another episode of Reactive. Catch you then.
Until next time, everyone.
Bye-bye.